So I come from like Michael Taft's Sangha, and the I've been studying with him for a few years, and I don't want to, take this conversation in another direction. So it's a kind of a question around the point of absorption within CC and trying to understand how it fits into the path. But just to bring it back to that Michael Taft point is his due to the traps of absorption states and them just being special states and not awakening, there's sort of an emphasis to like not really spend time doing absorption and the jhanas and whatnot from him. And so I'm not a jhana junkie. I'm someone who's dabbled, and I've just here and there, like, okay, there's the first or second jhana, okay, whatever. um, but like the sort of notion that he kind of points out is like you can just develop concentration and absorption from practicing vipassana. So I just was kind of curious to hear your points of view, because to me, like, jhanas and absorption is just like a black hole sort of part of spirituality that I like know a bit about but don't at the same time. um, Similar to Tim, like one of the first times I ever meditated, I got super absorbed, but I had no idea what that was. I was just doing a transcendental meditation mantra, and went anyway. So yeah, my main, that's the background of my question, so you can understand the view I'm viewing this from, and yeah, just you don't have to answer it all right now, but maybe at some point. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Sure.
I guess sort
Oh
of
yeah, go
touched
ahead,
on that.
Adrian.
Yeah, just the yeah. So there is an emphasis to a degree because we recognize there's a progression in terms of the training here. So there's a certain level of absorption capacity that's required before we do view refinement, right? So that's the extent that we emphasize the training, and there's a sequence to the pedagogy, like fitness, right? We got to develop certain levels of fitness before you do other exercises. But yeah, it certainly isn't something that we fixate on, like jhanas and stages. Like, so it is a balanced approach of, yeah, seeing the value of absorption and then seeing how it applies, not just in our sits, but how it carries into life. Right. It's one thing to maintain contact with experience when conditions are quite ideal, like quiet room, not a lot of distraction. It's another when someone's screaming at you, right, or a baby screaming at you, or right? Whatever, realize you haven't done your taxes and then you're freaking out. So yeah, so I think we're trying to present it in a way where it's important, it's valuable, but it's part of this entire ecosystem that's part of the CC culture. Because equally we have the realization arm of view refinement and the Pandita team in CC that's responsible for driving that engine of CC. And then there's the transmission technology that's used here to transmit the teachings, transmit the training, and the sangha, right? So the community, and then the purification as well. Yeah, it's like the certain amount of purification that comes from now being able to access certain levels of absorption, right? So because you've actually unlocked certain skills in absorption, now you can get to those levels of purification. Whether it be latent material that you just couldn't access because we're constantly disassociating, bouncing out of experience. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if that helps clarify the distinction.
Yeah, I just was trying to confirm then. Thanks as well. Just that its role within CC is to develop a level of concentration and absorption to facilitate awakening. Because you need that
Yeah.
fitness. So yeah, that's kind of what my take was prior to this public practice week as well. So anyway, yeah,
Maybe
because I
I
know
can.
you can just get caught up in the eighth jhana and you're blipping in and out or whatever. But yeah, yeah. So thanks.
Thanks for your question. I mean, I was just thinking about it specifically, how I've used absorption within CC is that for me, it's being able to be absorbed in the sit where we are able to see the edge of our fitness. Um, and in a way, it sheds light into the process of what we do, absorbing into what is actually happening, and seeing how what we do in the cushion really is just like a small fractal of how we operate off the cushion as well. So this absorption skill that we develop, uh, you know, put into the context of CC, contemplative CrossFit as a skill we develop. So we can take that off the cushion and just continue to see our own processes as it's happening. And really going to the edge of our fitness is where the training happens. Um, so that's what kind of the absorption skills are kind of used in CC. And like Adrian says, it really synergistically, or is that, I don't know if that's the right word, but allows, the point of view to be released that really gets us into being able to purify our experience. So all kind of built on top of each other, different skills, but yet at the same time, not making the skill or the experience or the technique into the thing itself that we're trying to attain. So,
I could touch on that real quickly too, because I spent time with Michael Taft's work, and it was really helpful to develop stability. But I think there's three components, at least for me, is speed, power, and stability when it comes to like having the ability to um, apply absorption. And to John's earlier point in the opening, like there's a point when absorption just becomes your natural way of being. When you recognize, even Taylor on day one said that we're actually always absorbed. We just don't actually connect that absorption, right? And so we're already exited in that absorption. And so earlier John's point about like recognizing the exit too is like that when you can absorb with a specific means to look at the edge, then you can expand that edge, continue to expand that edge until you're just always absorbed and always, being intimate with direct experience. And you can see when you're not. And that is, I think, the power of a lot of what happens here naturally just by sitting with the teacher in these group sets.
So getting better at the jhanas as opposed to floundering at the edge for a really long time and struggling, where you could strengthen your fitness and then bring it back to that edge. Yeah, I like that point. So thanks all of you for your answers. I appreciate it.